Little off day for the Texans, but the 53-man roster, the exercise has begun. It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans digital content. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. I got to tell you, Nick Caserio and company, they got their hands full. They got their hands full, and when you actually go through the exercise, instead of just talking about this guy may or may not make it, that's where you realize why these guys get paid the big bucks and why these guys have some tough decisions to make. Because it's one thing to look at a guy making a play and say, man, that guy might make the team. But then when you start actually looking at numbers, might be tougher than some think. Texans return to the practice field tomorrow. We'll be live out there. They got 2 practices. Then they'll get on a plane. They'll go to West Virginia, which I will as well. I'll be out in West Virginia with Cody Stutes. We'll give you the coverage. But the point of this episode and the point of this exercise is to answer the toughest questions that the Texans are going to have to face when it comes to the 53-man roster. And let's just jump right into it. One of the most prominent names on the roster, one of the most respected guys in the NFL the last few years, a guy that they signed late in the offseason, Nick Chubb. How does Nick Chubb fit into this roster? Now, we got to start thinking about this because we've already said what we've said about Nick Chubb, and the evidence is there. He's battling father time. He's battling injuries. And the running back room right now is not very stacked. So they're trusting him right now to run the rock. Now, what's going to impact the initial spot for Nick Chubb and whether or not he makes it? It could very well be as simple as the PUP list. Because right now you have Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce on the PUP list. And I almost wonder if maybe there is some sort of manipulation to where maybe one of those guys starts on PUP so that you can keep Chubb on the roster, which I don't know why you're bending over backwards for it. But quite frankly, if Mixon and Pierce are going to be out, then having Nick Chubb might make a little bit more sense than based on what the eye test has told us, which is all we really have to go off of. But if we look at the 53 that we put together today on SNL, which you can see here on YouTube, Monday through Friday, 4 o'clock with myself and Cody Stutes. Go subscribe to the channel, SNL Texans Talk. You can also listen on Spotify and all your podcast places. If you look at this roster right here, and this is the offense that we had on the 53-man roster, the running backs are right there in front of you. And notice there's no Dare Ogunbowale because Woody Marks has played such good special teams. But if you look at this, if Dameon Pierce is healthy and they want to look at Dameon Pierce, you would have 3 guys who don't play special teams at the running back position, assuming you wanted to keep all those guys. And maybe Jawar Jordan's the odd man out, but quite frankly, you've seen a big jump, at least in camp, from Jawar Jordan from year 1 to year 2. And is seeing what's going on with Nick Chubb worth it? I do wonder if Mixon and Pierce are healthy, can you really keep Nick Chubb on this roster? I got to wonder where they're going to manipulate that and what that's going to look like. Because I don't know that it's worth it if Mixon is there. And I'm not sure that Nick Chubb is better than Dameon Pierce right now, believe it or not. So that's one of the questions. Does Nick Chubb fit, and what's the impact? I think they're finally going to have to quit Dare Ogunbowale because Woody Marks is playing such good special teams. And we'll see if that looks the same once the games start, but he looks pretty good special teams wise. And he's the superior receiver. Don't know much about what he does in pass pro and what his body of work is there. We know they've always liked it with Dare. And keep in mind, just because a lot of these guys get released doesn't mean they don't hang around. Like, I don't know how many teams are going to be dying to pick up Dare Ogunbowale. And that might also factor into things. I think if Dameon Pierce hits the market, he could perhaps get picked up. But it's not Dare Ogunbowale. There's a good chance that you release him and then you might be able to keep him around. But the Nick Chubb thing is interesting because it lowers the versatility of your running back position. And quite frankly, I don't know that the current state of Nick Chubb is such to where he provides more than Pierce, Marks, and the other guys. That's kind of where we're at. I feel like whenever there's pushback on this, we always end up going in a time machine 2 injuries ago and 3 years ago. And we completely ignore the last time we saw him on a field. And what we've seen right now, we minimize that. So the Nick Chubb thing is going to be a real interesting thing. And the other thing right there in that running back area is, does Woody Marks replace Dare as the special teams running back? Because he looks good, special teams. Pretty sure he's going to be on the team. It might be tough for them because they haven't been able to quit Dare Ogunbowale, but they might have no choice, especially with Nick Chubb in the mix. And even if Chubb wasn't in the mix, depending on what they think of Dameon Pierce and what they want to do with Dameon Pierce, I kind of would like to see a look at Dameon Pierce at this point. I kind of would like to see it just to see what it looks like in comparison to Nick Chubb. I think if they asked him to do these same things, at least on the practice field, I think it might look better. Does that mean I think Dameon Pierce is ready to be a high quality, not high quality Kush,
high grade marijuana called Kush on the streets,
but a high quality RB2? No, it just means perhaps he has a little more juice right now than what Nick Chubb does. On the super chat,
you ain't never hate.
Swarm.
Shout out to everyone in the chat. HDAV Traveler says, evening, Landry and friends. Evening to you, mi amigo. Carl says, always a great show. Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you for coming through, Carl. Appreciate you for coming through. So there's no faith in Chubb at all. Look, I mean, what I don't know. Like what it really just depends on the actual scenario that you're laying out. If Joe Mixon's not ready to go, then I think you can keep Chubb around until he's ready to be activated. If Dameon Pierce and Joe Mixon can't go, I think you keep Chubb around. If both of those guys are healthy, I would love to see where he fits into this thing. And I mean, he was available for a reason, people. He was available for a reason. We've seen enough of this. Like, we've had this conversation way too much. But it's not, it shouldn't be like that shocking of a thing. It would be more shocking if it were just a no-brainer with everything that he's gone through. So Blue Boy says he trusts Chubb. You trust him for what? Why? I'm asking, like, to do what? Just elaborate, Blue Boy. I want to know. Like, you trust him to do what? And based on what? To do what based on what? That's the two questions I have for that. To do what and based on what? Because if you believe, just tell me why. Then we go to the offensive line. Speaking of juice, we're talking about Nick Chubb. It is the locker room. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. When it comes to the offensive line, I wonder if Juice Scruggs could play his way onto the roster. Now, he was a clear third teamer in offseason activities, but they've kind of started using him with the second team, where they've used Ingram. But Stoots thinks Ed Ingram's on this football team as well. I guess that's the case. And the thing that Juice Scruggs might have for him is that back-end roster versatility. Now, he didn't make our original 53. But I do think the arrow is pointing up, slightly up for Juice Scruggs. Now, what does he look like in games is going to be pretty key. Because right now, your starting offensive line appears set. And I dropped this video earlier today talking about the offensive line. Cam Robinson's your starting left tackle. Tomlinson's your starting left guard. And it looks like it's Howard Ursery on the right side. And then we don't know who's going to be at center. But when it comes to the 53, both Patterson and Andrews are going to make the roster. At least we assume. So the question is, could Juice Scruggs, could he play his way onto this roster? Crazier things have happened. Does being a second round pick matter in year 3? I don't know. I think it's kind of saving Blake Fisher. If Blake Fisher were performing like this in year 3, I don't know that he for sure is on the roster, but I guess in year 2, they could perhaps be a little bit patient. But could Juice play his way onto the roster? Next question, as we talk about the 53-man roster questions, is Jakob Johnson on the 53? We put him on our initial one. He's a tight end. He's your only traditional fullback. They're working him in at special teams. And he possesses a skill that no one else has, and his blocking might be better than most of the tight ends. So I think Jakob Johnson, when you start talking about like guys to keep around, I think Jakob Johnson is fine. Now, could they keep him, or could they not put him on the initial 53 and keep him around? Maybe. I could perhaps see that happening. But he's done well for himself. And I think there's a chance he might be one of the 2 best blocking tight ends on the team too, which would go a really long way, especially when you're trying to help the offensive line and protect Dalton Schultz from what he does. And that's the thing. The Texans have built a really deep roster, and they've built a roster that has a lot of depth. Like some of these guys that you're saying goodbye to, it's like, damn, you don't want to say goodbye to them. But it's just kind of the way that it is when you build a good roster. Now, the next observation I want to make is I think the Texans might be okay at corner. There was a little bit of concern about corner. And maybe we'll see what it looks like in the preseason, but you're good in the top 2. And the 2 Smiths who've been running second team, Tremont Smith looks like he's playing some pretty good defense, and Jalen Smith, who they obviously like a lot, they look fine. And then you have Mollett, and you have Miles Bryant. Miles Bryant's another one of those guys who can play nickel. He can also play corner. They've got him on special teams. They got him punt returning. Like Miles Bryant, the last 5 days, he is number 1 on the list of guys who've done the best for themselves, which is why he's kind of on the 53-man roster on the defensive side of the rock. So you look at Miles Bryant here. These are the 5 corners we have: Sting, Lassiter, Jalen Smith, Tremont Smith, and Miles Bryant. And the interesting thing is, like, if you were just a casual fan or someone who doesn't follow the Texans, you'd be like, damn, they're keeping 5 safeties and 5 corners. Well, Miles Bryant can be a nickel, which the majority of the time is your base defense. Jalen Petrie is essentially another starting linebacker, and he's all over the place. And these other guys, they like a lot to do other stuff, including MJ Stewart. Now, Jalen Reed made the initial 53. Keep in mind, if Jimmy Ward is going to be a part of this team, they're eventually going to activate Jimmy Ward, you would think, in season. And that would mean that Jalen Reed, who was a day 3 pick, and he's had a good camp, he could be on the outside. But it feels like they're pretty good at corner, regardless what decision they try to make and how they lay it out. So that's an interesting development. And this is kind of the case last year. Last year it was at CB2. This year it's at CB3 through 5. I personally feel better about the corners now than I did heading into the season. Now, and that pass rush doesn't necessarily help it or hurt it, I should say. Then we look at the wide receivers. And there's a couple of questions about the wide receivers. The question one, naturally, is how many wide receivers do they keep? Last year, at wide receiver, they kept 7. We had them keeping 6 when we actually did the exercise. Now, what would possibly allow them to keep 7 would be if they think Braxton Berrios is this year's Steven Sims. Last year, Steven Sims made the roster. All he did was return punts. Didn't go great, but they kept him around. Now, do they see more value in that than they do Jakob Johnson? Perhaps if Berrios was going to stay, maybe they could say goodbye to Jalen Reed. Maybe they could say goodbye to Miles Bryant. But on this roster, we put Berrios on the outside looking in, but I do think that Berrios has a shot. I think he has a shot. Nico, Kirk, Higgins, Knoll, they're for sure here. I would be shocked if they got rid of Xavier Hutchinson. And then Justin Watson, I think they like too, and he does a lot of other things. So they could keep 7 receivers. Do they see that value more so than having Jakob Johnson? How much do they value the fullback? Perhaps the extra tight end? It's another question. The numbers game gets crazy when you start talking about the 53. That's why they get paid the big bucks. Once again. So those are the biggest questions. You can go back to SNL and check out what we put together. But the other things you got to look at is the red means that these guys are in PUP, which means eventually you probably have to activate these guys. And whether it's before they make the decision or after, as soon as you activate the guy, you're going to have to move someone down. So Trent Brown, I don't know if that's realistic. We don't know if he can still play. It's a pretty serious injury. But Trent Brown would be someone to keep an eye on. Dameon Pierce, obviously. Joe Mixon's still on the non-football injury list, but you think that he might be ready. Not sure on that. They said they'd evaluate. Danico Autry. Do they justify keeping Danico Autry around? They like him a lot. He's 35 years old, though, and you have 2 guys in Horton and Bird who are good special teams players that have had good camps. You might have to decide between those 2, Horton and Bird. It just kind of seems like both of those guys kind of fit into what the Texans are trying to do. And they just seem to they look the part on the D line. I like the idea of Danico Autry. I know we go back a few years and he had the double-digit sacks, but 35, man. 35, how much are you going to how much is he going to be around? Can you really count on that? That's going to the back end of this DN, like you feel great about the top, the back end, a lot of questions. Because Horton and Bird have both had really good camps. Then you look at the D tackles, Rankins and Settle, Edwards, definitely. Stutz likes Togiai. Foley Fatukasi was hurt last year. He's hurt this year. Maybe you have some extra guys. They could end up bringing in some guys. I mean, we're not even factoring in here that guys get cut that they like. They're pretty good at working the waiver wire. But I think it's safety and corner. It's a pretty clear picture with a few questions. Special teams, you're obviously good. D end on the back end, there's a lot of decisions to be made. O-line, just a big-ass cluster. You have a pretty good idea about probably 7 of the guys that you're going to keep. Maybe 8, Zach Thomas. And then if Trent Brown came back, it would be interesting. Tight end, pretty much set in stone. Wide receiver, we got the Berrios question. And then running back, Pierce, Mixon, Chubb, just kind of there. Quarterback, they're only going to keep 2. and then they could end up bringing some of these guys back. The John Mechie, yeah, we didn't even factor in or consider John Mechie. But by the way, John Mechie's had a pretty good camp. Wayne has been out, and John Mechie's actually done a pretty good job. So John Mechie hasn't been bad. You might be able to get a little something back for John Mechie. Like a late round draft pick and whatever. Tazewell says Fadakasi is a big loss. He's not out. I mean, he's not done yet. They could still put him on the team. I mean, he did a good job stopping the run, but he was kind of banged up. He's not gone. This isn't official. This is just our exercise if you're just tuning in. Autry was destroying the Lions when Will was out. Yeah, he had some decent moments. It's just, do they think with Taylor and Barnett and Bird and Horton they can do just as good and figure something out? Don't know. Don't know. I thought 1,000% Berrios would beat out Mechie. I think he will. Yeah, Berrios is someone they might keep. They're gonna have to get creative. And I mean that might mean keeping somebody that you think is more appealing on the waiver wire, and then just kind of putting a guy out there and hoping he gets back. It's a game of chess. It's a game of chess. This is a good exercise to do. This is a really good exercise to do. Like British Brooks, he's not making the team, but I guarantee they want to keep him around. I mean, he might not make the original 53, but I could easily see British Brooks getting in a game in some way, shape, or form this year. They'd like to keep him around. But there's only, on this team with the way that they've put it together, there's a small amount of guys who don't play special teams. A small amount of guys. And most of them are just your total ballers. The Mixons, the Nico Collins. Even Schultz is doing special teams drills now. Henry To'o, very good special teamer. Maury Lassiter, he'll play some special teams. Jalen Petrie, still very involved in special teams. It's like when you start talking about Nick Chubb and you start saying, okay, well, maybe he can give him a little something. I mean, is a little something worth him not playing special teams? Maybe if you don't have Mixon. I think that makes their decision a lot easier. But that's something they're going to have to figure out. I think there's been a real nice development on the back end of D end. I think they've done an excellent job of adding some guys who do a lot of things, who can run. Absolutely run when you look at Horton and Bird. I would love to hear that discussion. Like the discussions that I would like to hear the most when it comes to the Texans and these decisions. Like, I would like to hear their discussions, like between players, about Nick Chubb and how he fits into this. Because they've got to at least be having the conversation. Okay, is Nick Chubb a guy that we think is going to help us out from start to end of the season? Because someone said like he could be this year's Cam Akers. He doesn't look as good as Cam Akers did last year. Like, I don't know that if Nick Chubb gets released, I don't know that someone just automatically brings him in. So that's a discussion I would love to hear. Like if the Texans were on Hard Knocks, I would love to hear the discussion that they're having about Nick Chubb. Hell, Dameon Pierce. Does Nick Caley want to see what Dameon Pierce has? He might just want nothing to do with him. Hell, maybe he's on PUP because they want to trade him. I would think with what you've seen with Nick Chubb, though, that you would at least want to see what Dameon Pierce can do and what he's made of. I'd like to hear their conversation about the fullback, obviously, Jakob Johnson. We touched on that. Zach Thomas and Blake Fisher. I'd love to hear the comparison. I'd love to hear Cole Popovich just come out and have a discussion about those two guys. Because we've seen Blake Fisher benched a couple times. Is Blake Fisher guaranteed some roster spot? Does it matter that he was a second round pick? If Jimmy Ward can play, Jimmy Ward's gonna be fine. And they'll figure out a way to put him on the roster, and they should. Really good reserve. And then you want to hear the back end DN conversation. I would love to hear them talk about Dylan Horton versus Bird. If that's something that's up for grabs. And then you got to hear what they think that Foley Fatukasi and Danico Autry got. Like, how much do those guys have left? Do they have anything left in the table in the tank? So I was talking earlier about my top five performers of camp, and they were all on defense. The starting edge guys, the starting corners, and Kalen Bullock. And the craziest thing about this is I don't think that the offense looks completely lost going against this defense. I think they did last year. Like last year, they damn sure did. But I don't think that's the case this year. The offense doesn't look completely lost by any stretch of the imagination. And it's kind of weird. Like it's not like a heavyweight dandy when it comes to like the boxing analogy. But they're throwing punches, they're protecting themselves. Like the ref isn't stopping the fight. It's not a complete beatdown like it was last year. They're at least showing a pulse. They're hanging in there and they're doing their thing. And I think the fact that when they looked the best was when they ran red zone. I think that should be the most encouraging thing about this offense. Now, how does CJ Stroud look? Someone asked me how does CJ Stroud look? He looks fine. This camp is more so about CJ Stroud's surroundings than anything else. And when we get in season, then we can start to evaluate like what everything is. But this is as much about his surroundings as anything else. But he's throwing the ball fine. I mean, he's having to go against one of the better defenses in the league, and the guy's coming off the edge. But I think as far as like, it seems like with Kaylee, there's also kind of a emphasis on having multiple ways to evaluate a practice play. If that makes sense. In other words, like whenever there's a sack, the play doesn't just look blown up and lost. It feels like they're letting it play out to where the rep between the DB and the offensive guy can still play out. And you can say, okay, well, this would have been a sack, but Stroud had a nice throw to, say, Christian Kirk or something like that. And it kind of becomes a discussion of, well, it would have been a sack. Yeah, it probably would have been a sack, but had the protection been good, then he would have completed the pass anyways. I think there's a real emphasis on that with the way that Nick Caley's practicing and maybe the way that D'Amico talked about it. Because last year it felt like there was it was like once a play got blown up by the defense, it was just kind of like, oh, damn, they're not being able to get out. But it seems like they've done a good job of playing it out. And maybe that's as simple as saying, hey, Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, keep your hands down. We know what a sack is. They'll still say what the sack is. Sometimes CJ will roll out, but it does seem like as a result of that, like over time, over the week, it seems like CJ Stroud has done a really good job of recognizing, buying time, getting out, committing to running early where he would probably get down. He's done a good job of using his legs, but it does seem like there's kind of an emphasis with Nick Caley when it comes to that. I'm going to ask him about that tomorrow, actually. I'm gonna try to make it make sense because it's kind of weird when you say multiple ways to evaluate, but that does seem like something that he might actually nerd out on and give us a pretty decent ass answer in. So I think the coordinators are going to be tomorrow. I'll ask Nick Caley about that if that's kind of a point of emphasis, as well as what he thinks about the running backs, how they fit in, the ones that aren't there. Might be some interesting answers from Nick Caley tomorrow, assuming that we get to talk to him. I want to talk about Bobtac, though. Shout out to Bobtac helping us get out to West Virginia. It's going to be fun. And Bobby's been doing his thing for 45 years. 45 years industry experience. He's still got plenty left in the tank. As a matter of fact, his best years are ahead of him because he provides you with what you need when you want to be safe. Gloves, FR, coveralls, protective clothing, all things safety, anything trucking, maritime related, chemical plants, local trucking, all that. You can hit him up 24/7. He's giving out his real phone number, 409-744-8225. You can shoot him a text, and he'll get you taken care of. Locally owned and operated. There's even some stuff that you can use around the house if you need some gloves, some hydration, whatever. They got you, and they will deliver to you for free. And they'll also ship nationally. And it's real person. It's not AI. They're not jacking up prices. Pay less, get more. Shout out to Bobtac. Give Bobby and Reed a call, 409-744-8225. On the suit, Frank Z.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
He says, is Trent Brown going to play at all, or is he just there to help coach up the rookies? I don't know. I know that's a pretty serious injury. I know he's big-ass dude. He's old. I don't know. I know Aaron Wilson said he got cleared for football activities. So I was asking Aaron, I was like, what does that mean? I guess football activities are different than what you or I may think. So I don't know how Trent Brown fits into this. I don't know how he moves around. I don't know how that works with Trent Brown. Is Ursary looking good or is his competition bad? Chase asks. He looks fine. I mean, he does. I mean, I'm not I'm not trying to minimize it. For a rookie, he's doing a hell of a job. And he's getting the first team reps with the right tackle, and he's getting the third team reps at left tackle. He looks like he's actually either trimmed up or put on some muscle since rookie mini camp. So he looks like he's already like in as good of a shape as we've seen any rookie offensive lineman that they've drafted the last 4 years, which, by the way, I mean, you speak of competition, there's not much good competition there. But I would say he looks good. Like if we weren't looking at Blake Fisher, I will say when you see what kind of camp Blake Fisher has had early on, he definitely makes Ursary look better. I will say that. Like if that's what you're asking. But as far as like if Blake Fisher weren't there and like there was no like blatant struggles to compare him to, I would say he looks pretty damn good and pretty damn promising for a young tackle. Like I could very easily see that you might have your left tackle of the future. I think this time next year we could be talking about him being the starting left tackle in year 2. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of both, but I don't think it's just like crazy. Like he looks this way. Like, let me put it this way. I want to see what Dameon Pierce looks like now because of what we're seeing from Nick Chubb. That would not be the case when it comes to Blake Fisher just completely making Ursary look better. Andre says, how do you feel about Nick's offense so far? It's hard to tell. I mean, they seem like they're not getting roughed up as much, and the defense looks even better. So they're at least standing their ground. But I don't know what the system is. I don't think he's like trying to out scheme the defense. I mean, that's the other thing, and that's kind of where JJ Watt started kind of crying on Twitter about practice stats, but he's not really attacking. Now the defense isn't doing everything they can do either, but I think there's possibility that he's probably going to use the quick game a lot, especially if he's facing a defense like the Texans. And I also think there's probably a possibility that he's going to mix it up a little bit more than he is right now. So I think it's fine. But as far as like the overall scheme, I don't have any like big takeaways of like, this is better than Bobby. And I heard like some revisionist history on this. Like that his practices look much more smooth and stuff. I don't really know. I think it was a clip from 610. I think it was Clint Sterner or something. I don't know, but it was someone said, whoever said that like the practices like early on look more smooth. I don't remember us saying that the process and the way in which the Texans practice with Slowick in training camp last year was bad. That kind of seems like revisionist and it kind of played out, but I don't recall that being said. So I to answer your question, I don't see that very much when it comes to Nick Caley. I don't know. I feel fine about his offense. He seems like a smart guy, but as far as like some sort of systematic takeaway, don't really have one. Don't really have one at all. So that's what I would say on that. Can Trent Brown do a pull-up? I don't know. That would be a hard-ass pull-up. What's he weigh, like 380? That seems like a hell of a lot. We going 380. Corey says if they would have listened to you and just invested in the running back group, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Yeah, I actually don't think like the running backs have looked that bad. It's just the guy at the top is just it just doesn't seem to be working. So that's where that is. Party says I'm waiting to hop on the Chubb train. Pause till we see him in preseason. Okay. I mean, we can keep pushing it back. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That happens like when you're trying to prolong something. I mean, that's kind of how it works, right? Like if you don't want to get rid of your car and you love it, well, let's just see if we can just fix the oil. Now, let's see if it can get us to here. Let's see if we can get this done. Well, let's start putting premium gasoline in it. And I get that there's a sentimental, but it seems like it always gets pushed back, like a different thing. Like it was, let's see how he looks in the pads. Now it's let's see how he looks in preseason. Let's see how he looks when the lights are gone. Like it's almost like we don't even remember what happened last year. It's almost like unfair to him at this point. They're giving him every opportunity. Chubb is a solid backup. Sounds good to me. Let me see him in full speed. Okay. Cashed out YT says Chubb is a good number 2 back. You don't know how to evaluate running backs. Okay. Teach me. Tell me what you're seeing. I know that most running backs don't get second contracts. At about 29 is when you kind of see the fall off. You factor in a massive injury and then a broken foot, along with what happened last year and what you're actually seeing right now. Okay. Teach me how to do it. Teach me how to do it. I hope you're right. I'm not rooting against Nick Chubb. I can promise you that. That's one of the easiest guys in the world to root for. But if he's a solid RB2, why didn't the Browns keep him? He's a legend there. He's a god there. He's a legend and a god. It's a deep roster with a lot of depth. High grade Landry. Is that repetitive? Is that what you're saying when you say a deep roster with a lot of depth? Is that like too repetitive? I don't know. Is Ezekiel an English teacher? Perhaps. Need to find an offensive D'Amico. I mean, you would win a Super Bowl if you had an offensive D'Amico. It's one of the better defensive minds in the game. British Brooks is my Christian Harris. He's not making the team. They'll keep him around. I don't think he's making the team. I think there's a chance he might look good in preseason, though. He could be one of those guys that, like, in the third and fourth quarter, starts creating, like, that fan buzz. I could see them giving him the rock, like, 15 times or something. Him going for, like, 98 and 2 tutties in the preseason. Have us going nuts. Give us a little bit to talk about in the preseason. That'd be good. A shout out to Jacob, Texans Jacob. My dog. He says the biggest thing for Autry is the versatility and potentially saving a spot with the interior D-line DN, but you need him to stay healthy, like you said. Yeah, the problem is I don't know how many DTs they're going to keep. But like Bird and Horton also play special teams. I don't think that, like, they're obviously not as versatile as Danico Autry. Danico Autry's got a really great body of work when it comes to moving along the D line. But those guys can play special teams. They're actually developing very nicely. They can run. They're very cheap. So yeah, I feel you on that. That's kind of a give or take. Like how much do they think they can count on him? But yeah, I don't know how much they feel, how good they feel about Autry. Mr. Heisenberg says, I'll wait to see in-game action before I evaluate Chubb as washed. Okay, well, let me just say this. If that's the case, and I hear this is kind of pushing it back, and I love Mr. Heisenberg, so I'm not picking on you. I actually want to send you a gift. So if you can, just like in the chat, or if you want to just do the email, just send me like your address. I want to send you a gift, like a card or something like that, because apparently you've been in a coma for the last year. He played last year, guys. Like, I know we didn't follow very closely. Like, it almost feels like when we talk about Nick Chubb, we remember the injury that he had, which got a lot of attention, which was 2 years ago. And we're almost acting like this is the first time that he's going to step on the football field. If that were the case, I would be wondering, okay, what is this going to look like and how is it going to be? I'll be right there with you. And I've had this conversation with some people and they're not even aware. They're not even aware that he played last year. He played half the season and he broke his foot. So on top of that injury that we're talking about, he played half the season. It was one of his most unproductive seasons ever. You talk to people who cover him in Cleveland who love him. He didn't look good, and then he broke his foot. So if you're waiting for in-game action, like what? I know the Browns aren't popular. They were one of the worst teams in the league last year. But you just go back and watch what he looked like on the Browns last year. And they had a couple of running backs that actually ran decently behind that line. So I need to send you a card and just welcome you back to earth or something like that, because there's no it's not, this isn't the first time he's stepping on the field since the major injury. He broke his foot again last year. Like, expecting this guy to go out there and do something is crazy. I look, if Mixon's not going to be on the roster, cool. But let's just be realistic. He was terrible. He was terrible. And he played. Like, that was one of the main conversations in Cleveland last year. On 92.3 The Fan out there. Shout out to Keith Britton, Ken Carmen, Anthony Lima, Baskin, Nick Wilson, like all those guys. Like I talked to them. Like that was the main thing was, man, this is hard to watch. That's what they were saying. It was after the injury. Man, this is really hard to watch with Nick Chubb. This is tough. And he broke his foot. And he turned 29. It was tough. I think just the fact that he's even out there doing this is a miracle. I mean, you got to evaluate what you see with Nick Chubb. But yeah, I don't know how we see that. And he's easy to root for. It's not a disrespect thing. I would love to, like, I would love to see Nick Chubb be a productive member of this team. It'd be great. Great guy to have around. Great guy in the locker room. But you got Pierce and Mixon right now, and you don't know. And that Damian Pierce is a whole nother issue on himself. He's when he's out there, he seems to have a little bit more juice than Chubb does, but he can't stay healthy to save his life unless there's some sort of strategic move that they have going on right now. Maybe they want to get an early look at Nick Chubb. But it creates a lot of discussion. It creates a lot of. But we're not. I truly think a lot of the people don't realize that he played last year. I don't expect you to. Like I get it wasn't like anything memorable. The only reason I know it is because of like all the Cleveland connects. Like it wasn't like something that led Sports Center. Damn sure wasn't anything relevant to the league. But I truly think some people don't even like think that. Okay, the last time I saw Nick Chubb, he was breaking his leg in multiple places. It ended up being a really bad injury, but not as bad as we thought it was. And a lot of times it's a 1.5, 2-year injury, and he's just now coming back. So these assholes who are sitting there and talking about how slow he is and what he looks like, which wouldn't be a jerk move no matter what, if it's what you see, no matter who you are, they're not even taking into account that he had that injury. No, he's been back since that injury, and he broke his foot afterwards amidst the worst season of his career. So there you go. Nick, the actor, says it feels like the same deal whenever Tank returns. Expecting him to hit 1,000-yard season and easily be a number 2 is admirable, but a crazy assumption. Yeah, he's not playing this year. Like we got to stop that. Like just because he's out there with his teammates and stuff, he's not playing next year. It's not happening. It wouldn't make sense for him, and it wouldn't make sense for them. Like, why would he go out there and risk it and kind of push it and try to be a hero, even if he was capable of it, before the final year of his deal? Why would they want that? Like last year when he was rehabbing his injury, and this is the other thing about that, it wasn't like Tank Dell didn't have good games. We've had this conversation. We've gone through it. But yeah, that's one of the sillier things. Oh, come back. No, it's not. He's not playing football this year. He's going to be around the team. He's going to be in good spirits. I'm not sitting here dismissing and saying that Tank Dell's never going to be a productive player. We'll see. But as soon as he goes out there and touches his toes and stretches and runs around in pads or whatever, that's a miracle for Tank Dell. Like that's an achievement. But he's coming back this year. That's got to stop. That's just insane. And it's not obviously he's going to stay in high spirits and say he's going to be back sooner. But that's not even like realistic for him. Yeah, Tank's best game was against Kansas City. That's what was frustrating is you kind of saw the Tank Dell from the year before. The first time you really got a consistent glimpse of it was when he went down. But now, I mean, the wide receiver room, as far as youth, is pretty set. So, like, in a perfect world, Tank Dell comes back and he's what? 4th receiver? But even then, that might be a lot to ask. How much? I mean, 2 years, 2 big injuries, and probably a year away from football. Yeah, that's got to stop. I mean, unless it's just kind of motivating him, but Tank Dell playing, like, let's be serious. It's not going to happen. So tomorrow they're going to be back on the field. I don't know what the intensity level will be. I know they got 2 practices and then they got the off day before West Virginia. I think the West Virginia practices are going to be a mofo going into the game. I don't anticipate they're going to play everyone in the first preseason game. So I would imagine they're kind of going to try to intensify practice a little bit in West Virginia. But tomorrow and Saturday, who knows what they have in store for us. I love the Saturday practices, though, by the way. There's 0 traffic on the way there. That's the best thing. They got a lot of decisions to make. They've done a really good job of putting together a very deep roster, and they've done a very good job of adding guys that are versatile, that can do a lot of things, which kind of gives you a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to the roster. And there'll be guys on the practice squad that don't make the 53 that will contribute this year. It's just the way of the world. There's always going to be injuries and there's always going to be opportunities. So keep your eye on it. Like Tazewell says in the chat, subscribe, like, right along, all that stuff. It's been a fun off day. Getting to the bottom of this 53. And then tomorrow it picks up and we'll see how it goes down. Appreciate y'all for rolling through. We'll talk to you tomorrow after practice. Always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Gracias.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah.